This podcast includes graphic depictions of true crime cases and may contain explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, everyone. You are listening to We Saw the Devil. This is Robin.
And this is Jackie.
If you get online whatsoever, be it TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, you have undoubtedly seen all of the articles, all of the posts about the 2011 film that is now, for some reason, again going viral this year.
It's been resurrected, more or less.
It has been resurrected like a corpse. I find it really, really interesting, and we're going to get into it, deep dive, and talk about it, but it's one of the most random pop culture things I think I have ever seen. My original podcast was actually horror-based. We reviewed and discussed horror films, themes, and we covered this film very heavily, no joke, 9 years ago. So imagine my surprise when all of a sudden this has gone viral once again. The reactions that this film is eliciting from people is extreme, to say the least. So we're really, really super excited to talk about it. Before we get into that, though, let's just get the quick housekeeping out of the way. You can find us at WeSawTheDevil.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at We Saw the Devil. You can find us on Instagram at We Saw the Devil Podcast. We have a pretty cool Patreon, if I do say so myself. We have various levels for as little as $3 a month, where you get postcards for our Case of the Month, t-shirt, true crime gift, swag, and a private Facebook group. And we love each and every one of our current patrons.
We love you guys.
We do. It's become a literal family. You can find that at patreon.com/WeSawTheDevil or on our website, WeSawTheDevil.com. All right, so let's get into talking about the movie and trying to understand why all of a sudden 2020 is forcing this upon us now. We have seen a lot of conversations swirling around. I mean, this is actually technically my second episode I've done about this movie now. That film is Megan is Missing, a 2011 low-budget indie film that quietly landed on the scene with overwhelmingly negative reviews and surprisingly not a lot of controversy. It was actually shot originally in 2006, and it didn't get a wide release until 2011. It was so uninspiring that it almost immediately went to Netflix, where it stayed for years. I'm talking like 10 years. Megan is Missing has been on Netflix, which is usually not really a great sign. We all know exactly how much Netflix loves keeping, quote, torture porn available for the masses to stream.
That's not a thing.
It's not a thing, by the way. One of the big catchphrases of the film, and a lot of the conversations that I'm seeing going around, is that it's banned. New Zealand did in fact ban the film back in 2011 with Anchor's release. They classified it as objectionable. And they cited sexual violence and sexual conduct involving teenagers, said that the film relished in one actress's 3-minute rape scene, and then claimed that the film sexualized the lives of children and teenagers to a, quote, highly exploitative degree. Since its release, it's been largely quiet and forgotten. It's basically been comfortably sleeping in some sort of bad horror movie stasis for years now. Until this week, when TikTok user Bella Claire said, quote, "Please watch this film at your own risk. It is something I will never watch again. I am forever traumatized." And she's a pretty famous TikToker, so that apparently started a chain reaction. And it got random people to watch it, it got other famous TikTokers to watch it, and they've all made posts about it. Stevie Nicks Stan said, "Just finished Megan is Missing and I wish I hadn't even watched it." Baby Maui said, quote, "Just finished Megan is Missing. Dude, what the fuck? That was traumatizing." Another Twitter user said, "Megan is Missing, man. That shit got me staring at the wall and wanting to delete all my social media accounts and never come back again."
That's pretty intense.
Now, even Sarah Turney, the host of the podcast Voices of Justice, and she's amazing. If you recall, we actually discussed her not terribly long ago because her being a TikToker and then having the podcast, she helped solve her own sister's murder. Well,
what an incredible woman.
She's absolutely incredible, and all the love and respect in the world to her. Well, she chimed in on Twitter saying, quote, "The director of Megan is Missing trying to justify the movie on TikTok as if it's not a borderline softcore child. Terrible project is really sending me." Let's listen to the clip that she's referring to directly from director Michael Goy. And he actually did upload this to TikTok. He left it for viewers due to, basically Megan is Missing's newfound fame.
Hello, my friends on TikTok. This is Michael Goy, the writer-director of Megan is Missing. And I got a text from Amber Perkins, the lead actress in my movie, that it was exploding on TikTok at the moment. And I didn't get to give you the customary warnings that I used to give people before they watched Megan is Missing, which are, do not watch the movie in the middle of the night. Do not watch the movie alone. And if you see the words photo number 1 pop up on your screen, you have about 4 seconds to shut off the movie if you're already kind of freaking out before you start seeing things that maybe you don't want to see. So apologies to those who are already posting about how the movie has freaked them out, but fair warning to those of you who are still contemplating watching the film. Thanks.
Now, on paper, all of this sounds awful, right? Like, what kind of garbage film is this? Well, let's break that down. Megan is Missing is a found footage style film about 2 teenage best friends, Megan and Amy. Megan, played by actress Rachel Quinn, is the popular one and has somewhat of a typical life as a 14-year-old girl. Megan, she and her mom constantly fight. She sneaks out to parties to smoke pot and drink. She talks to all of her friends online. At one point, she's discussing giving a guy a blowjob for cocaine. They obviously set her up to be one particular personality type. Now, her lifelong best friend is Amy, played amazingly actually by Amber Perkins, and Amy could not be more opposite. Other than Megan, she has no other friends. She feels as though she isn't beautiful. She has a loving, close-knit relationship with her parents, and she does very well in school. More importantly, she's very cautious and skeptical.
Robin, is this you? Are you telling me about yourself?
It is. The first 2 acts of the film are solely about character building. We get to see Megan party, be very hypersexualized, and just it creates this contrast between the 2 girls, yet cements the bond between them for us, the viewer, how much they love each other. We get to know them through their webcam, the conversations with their friends, and also handheld camera footage. And they confide in one another, talk to their friends, party, and just overall go through life. And, as is the method with all found footage films, all of this is magically in full captured on cameras. One day, Megan starts talking online with a boy named Josh. And Josh is obviously older. He sounds like a full-ass grown man. We don't know much about him. He's very cryptic. Amy, forever the shy skeptic, also isn't sure about him. Megan just continuously reassures her that all is well, and that is until Megan goes missing, just like the title of the movie. Her abduction is captured on CCTV footage, and it shows an unidentified man rushing up to her, grabbing her by the elbow, and then just leading her off screen. Megan had decided to meet him behind a diner, unwise decision, and then Megan is now missing. Amy is the only person between the 2 of them who really holds the clues as to what could have happened to Megan. She reports Josh to the police and reaches out to him personally for more information. And this is where expert-level grooming and gaslighting techniques come into play. It almost feels a little too Lifetime Network movie after school special, but it is so absolutely real and accurate. He compliments Amy, and she's incredibly insecure. She looked up to Megan. She wanted to be the carefree person, but she just couldn't be. And he compliments her and says, you're sexy. Then simultaneously in the same sentence called her stupid. These are the first 2 acts of the movie. Then we get into the content that really, really, really upset and disturbed viewers. And I'm assuming why this is now suddenly trending again. The pictures hit. And these are the ones that Michael Goy, the director, actually created his TikTok video to warn viewers about. This is perhaps one of the biggest bones of contention when it comes to this film. In the movie, photos of Megan show up in an online BDSM fetish forum. She's in her bra and underwear. She's caged in a homemade bondage contraption. Her mouth is held open by a stainless steel, harness gag. And there are spikes keeping her mouth wide open. Her face is smeared with blood, and the look on her face is one of pure terror. Now, it is a shocking image. I am not taking away from that. Jackie, you saw it. What did you think?
I think it's traumatizing. Especially for most women, I feel like it's a big fear.
It is. So Amy then goes to a secret hangout spot that she and Megan used to go to. And utilizing the handy cam footage, she's sitting there holding a stuffed animal, talking to Megan, and turns around to look at something. And that's when we see a hand really quickly enter the frame as if it's about to grab her. And the footage stops. And it's like, oh no, not again. From there, it goes to news stories, an interview with her parents, footage of investigators actively searching in trash cans and dumpsters, and it shows us, the viewers, that Amy has now also been abducted. Then the film cuts to a black screen that says, following are the final 22 minutes of footage from Amy Herman's camera, unedited and unaltered. And the film actually, at this point, goes real time. It switches, and it starts with a shot of a stone wall with a door. And you hear Amy screaming for help and that she wants to go home. A man opens the door, and Amy tells the man that she wants to go home, but also wants to know if Megan is there. We recognize the voice as the online stranger named Josh that she and Megan have been talking to. No surprise there. He then splashes her with water and shuts the door. And Amy now is in her bra and underwear, just cold on the floor in the cell by herself. Now, the camera that she had is now being used and held by Josh, and we watch as he feeds her dog food in a bowl on the ground. And what follows next is one of the hardest scenes of this film to sit through, and it's one that people have consistently brought up. It's a 3-minute real-time rape scene. And the camera, though, it doesn't linger, it's not exploitative, it doesn't show you anything except a close-up on Amy's face. Now, obviously, this is supposed to be a 14-year-old child, so that is traumatizing in itself.
Well, yeah, and you have to consider the fact that a lot of women don't want to see that.
So the camera turns back on with Josh opening the door to Amber's cell, and he tells her that he's ready to move her and let her go, but that she has to get into like a large drum because he doesn't want her knowing where he lives. As the lid is taken off, we see Megan. And she is very, very, very dead and very much decomposing.
Well, the special effects are just crazy.
Crazy good.
I'm sorry to say it, but they did a really good job on them. Because, I mean, it's not real, okay? It's not real.
That was the entire budget, I am convinced.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was incredible. The graphics on that, you know, you've seen a lot of crime scenes and what things would look like. It is very realistic looking.
It looks like it would be from a crime scene.
Mm-hmm, it really did. Up until this point, the acting has been relatively poor. And this is one reason why I'm not a huge personal fan of found footage films. I find that most actors and actresses can't quite perfect the naturalism, like the natural, everyday.
I agree with that, yeah. It's very hard for people to just be normal because it's not... Acting has never been a normal thing.
Right.
It's always exaggerated. It has to be performed in a certain way to make it believable. And this is, when you do something like found footage, it's opposite day almost.
Yeah, no, exactly. And these were children, and we'll get more into it, but these young actresses, I think, did a fairly decent job with what they were given.
But you also have like a lot of startup actors and actresses, or actors in general, when they do these found footage things, because they're building up a resume a lot of the time. And so you have a lot of inexperienced acting that's involved, and it kind of draws you away from it 98%. It's a turnoff. It's a huge turnoff.
And there are multiple parts of Megan is Missing where I felt that way, but the last 20 minutes of this movie are so beyond disturbing that it puts you into it because it does feel real. And that's why, like, the ending, the last 20 minutes, why it's so disturbing is because the rest of the movie was quite honestly so piss poor that you don't expect it. It's like starting a movie and it being D-level Lifetime network movie actors, and then all of a sudden the last 20 minutes, like Meryl Streep shows up. I mean, it's really jarring, just the quality of the film as a whole. But one thing is that, you know, everyone hears the term scream queen, right? Of women who can show terror and fear in a believable manner, because I truly, honestly believe it is really sincerely difficult to show actual terror. That takes talent to be believable, to feel and look like you're being terrorized. That takes talent. And I would like to nominate Amber Perkins for that because she, in the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes of this film, is absolutely incredible. She lets out the most blood-curdling screams because Josh, the man Josh, forces her to get into the barrel with Megan and her partially decomposed body.
Oh, God.
And it is horrifying. And the sound design, whoever did the sound design, the barrel had liquid in it.
Oh, no. it just gets even worse.
Yeah, and you hear it sloshing. A lot of us know what happens to body when they are part tub girl. The camera then picks up with Josh digging a hole at night, and this goes in real time for nearly 10 minutes. He just digs and digs. And it was a little overkill, but I understand that they were trying to go for real time to make you feel like you were in it, right? As he's digging the hole, Amy is actually speaking to him from inside the barrel, and it is heartbreaking. I love you. Please don't do this to me. I love you, Josh. We love each other. We would be perfect for each other. Crying. Why are you doing this? I'm really sorry. Why? I love you. I don't want to die. What do you want me to do? She pleads for her life for 5 full minutes as he's digging, pleading. And finally, Josh pushes the barrel over into the hole.
Oh, no.
You hear the water sloshing inside, which we can only imagine. And
I can't.
And he slowly starts to cover the barrel with dirt. And Amy's screaming and pleading as he's doing this becomes fainter and fainter and fainter until the barrel is covered and there is nothing. He picks up the camera and then he walks up a hill, and all you can hear is him crunching through the leaves. And as he reaches the top, he stops, pans the camera back to the burial site, and there's nothing. It is complete and utter silence. And the film closes and it shows you the missing posters for each girl. And it's followed by old footage of them laying in bed together, discussing what they wanted to be when they grow up. This is just cementing their bond because, like, as viewers, we are sitting there with, like, our hands over our mouths, like, Jesus Christ, what did we just watch? I mean, it's devastating. So it cements their bond to us, and they say that they want to be each other because it's very clear, you know, Megan asks Amy, what do you want to be when you grow up? And Amy says, I want to be you. And then Megan says, well, I want to be you. We're going to have such amazing lives, and then reassures Amy that they're both going to meet the right guy. And it's devastating irony, obviously. That's the movie. This is the movie, full spoilers, walked you through it, that everyone is getting all up in arms about. Now, if you know me, if you've listened to my old podcast, you know that I love and I live for extreme movies. Jackie, you like a couple too?
Yeah, of course. Does this feel like an extreme movie to you, Robin?
Not whatsoever.
Why?
I feel for me, an extreme film, right? Like, let's talk about some of the main ones. We have August Underground, right? Like Mortem, August Underground, a Serbian film, Cannibal Holocaust. They're meant to shock, upset, unearthed.
Hostel is a very common one.
It's one that people always mention that I completely and utterly disagree with. To me, extreme films aren't even
gore fest.
There's zero attraction to them mainstream.
Here's my real question for you is, why is this not extreme? Like, what makes it extreme? Why, to you, is this not an extreme film?
To me, an extreme film is one that is solely meant to shock and disgust. It's meant to be exploitive. Megan is Missing. The director, and initially, I mean, this was written in 2006. He was inspired by family and then hearing about other similar cases that went on. Because this happens, you know, at least once a week. Jackie, don't you hear about someone who met someone online and then disappeared and ended up dead?
It happens more often than we like to admit, yeah.
Way more often than we like to admit or even discuss. I mean, here in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle, this woman met this man. They went on a date, and then he freaking took her back to his own home, dismembered her, what the circle saw in his bathroom after going to, on a date, after meeting online. So I think that this film, especially with the intention of the director, was to be more educational. And when this movie came out, because we covered it when it came out in 2011, it was billed as being almost like a tool, like an educational tool that was also just happened to be more of a horror movie. The director didn't even consider it to be a horror movie per se.
It's almost like we forgot Dee Snider's Strangeland even existed.
Right.
Because let me tell everybody for a moment. Dee Snider's Strangeland was a bad movie at the end of the day that for some reason I worshipped when I was younger when I saw it. It was edgy. It was this guy who was a killer who ended up just basically luring people through the internet, through chats.
It was like one of the OG ones.
Yeah, and you know what? And then he used different types of torture and piercing.
He was into body modification.
Yeah, I think that's what made him so edgy too. But it was different. But see, with that movie, you're not even emotionally compelled, and it's not even that realistic. But with this movie, it's realistic, and I think that's what makes it traumatizing, is that a lot of women have experienced a lot of things similar to this. It's a fear. It's a real fear.
I feel like I have seen actually far worse things on cable television at the end of the day. I have seen more offensive content on free cable television than is in Megan is Missing. I truly believe that the reason that women, especially women, are becoming so upset by this is because it strikes a chord in us, because we have all in some way or form experience.
It's touched our lives somehow.
Right. Even with the character Megan talking about how when she was 10 years old, she went to summer camp and her 17-year-old counselor forced her into giving him oral sex. You know, little things like that. Or if they're out for parties, you know, and the men be like, well, hey, you know, you owe us. Or if you go on a date with someone, and talking about just the sexual male-female relationships.
Modern day Welcome to the Dollhouse.
Right. You know, it's like all of these little nuanced pieces that Michael Goy put in there. It's a social thing at this point. And all of these things in one way or another have impacted us personally.
I think so, and I think it's so in your face that you have to feel the experience. I feel like found footage for me is very hard for me to adapt to, just because it's acting that takes me out of context, and sometimes I get a little bit like irritated with the movements of the camera. Not in this case in particular, but in most found footage. But it's a hard sell for me. But I think that the special effects is what really brought this forward, and the format of how it all happened. It makes it so realistic.
It really does. Now, I pride myself and I love extreme film. There is a film by Unearthed Films, the production company, called Torment, and they made a film about John Wayne Gacy. Basically, they tried to be as realistic as possible. It has an X rating, NC-17 rating. It's actually banned in most countries. I've seen a lot of stuff, and it does not actually impact me terribly. The gore doesn't impact me. Even a Serbian film, the child aspect, I was laughing at how bad the prosthetics were. The effects themselves were terrible.
It was still shocking. That was the point of it, was to be shocking.
There was actually political commentary with a Serbian film. That's an episode for a different day. But yeah, it was meant to be shocking. But Megan is Missing, because even through the crappy acting, they actually do a fairly decent job of character development for the first 2 acts of the film. And then when you get into the handheld camera stuff, it becomes so realistic, especially in the 3rd act, in the last 20 minutes, when he switches to real time, as you have to experience it in real time.
How do you feel about some of the commentary that people are leaving on TikTok and stuff?
I am not one to comment on other people's traumas, triggers, PTSD, things like that. Again, bringing back to most women have been impacted by violence, sexual violence in some form or another. I'm not one to judge that. I do think it's a really interesting conversation, though, to talk about the fine line that this film walked. Even Sarah Turney, I mean, she's an incredible woman and podcaster, and even she called this movie out for being what she called, quote, softcore child, and she's implying porn. She's implying that this film is softcore child porn. And I respectfully disagree so much. I feel like this film could potentially be a tool. Does this happen to every single person, every single young girl who meets someone off the internet? Obviously not. But you know what? I know throughout my life, I actually sat down and counted today. I've had 4 friends who have young teenage girls who have met older men off the internet who are creeps.
I have a very close experience with this. Not me in particular, but somebody I know. And it's very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, it is extremely difficult to deal with. And anything dealing with violence in children is going to get an insane amount.
It's going to get me stabby. It makes me angry.
It does, but I feel like this movie, I think that it accomplished what he was setting out to do. I truly, truly do. He's showing the perils, and this is, in fact, what happened. Let me give you something else to chew on. The two actresses, we have Rachel Quinn and Amber Perkins. Now, Rachel, who plays Megan, was 14 years old at the time of filming this. So when she did her photograph, right, of being in the BDSM contraption and she was in her bra and underwear, she was 14 years old. Amber, at the time, who plays Amy, she was 17 at the time of filming. So consent was clearly given by their parents. If you're sitting there stewing mad, hating us and cursing our names right now, would you feel any differently if I told you that it has received an endorsement from two different parents of kidnapped, raped, and murdered young girls? Their children were raped and murdered. And they still say that this is one of, particularly to Mark Klass, the father of a 12-year-old girl who was kidnapped and killed in 1993, says that this is one of the most important films he's ever seen.
Why do you think it would be important, Robin?
Again, I have, sitting throughout my life, I know 4 people who have children, teenage girls, who have experienced this. One girl was being groomed by a 40-year-old man at age 15, and she was sending pictures of herself. He was having her do all sorts of crazy things, and then she ended up trying to go meet him, and her parents thankfully intercepted it with like a tip from one of her friends.
I think that this is a huge fear for a lot of parents, especially modern day parents, right? Like our age.
Right.
Who have kids. A lot of kids have, a lot of little girls and stuff have phones and gaming consoles even. It happens on gaming consoles, you guys.
I mean, it's happened on Fortnite, it's happened on PlayStation. I mean, the age of the internet has created all of these additional problems that, I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't have to worry about that. Like, we had AIM, like AOL and AIM. Like, sure, there were creepy chat rooms and stuff, but, and I see a lot of people on I Am High and This Is True Crime bringing up a Serbian film in all of these conversations. And they're like, you know what? A Serbian film didn't impact me like Megan Is Missing did. When it connects with you and connects with your life, say like 14-year-old girls who get nabbed off the internet.
Well, we've all been that girl. Mm-hmm. Like in a way, we've all known that girl to a degree. It all connects us. It all impacts us somehow.
It does. As a whole, I do find Megan Is Missing, speaking for myself, to be an incredibly important film. I think that it impacts people differently. Do you have the trauma? Do you have like a pre-existing trauma to content like this? It is not probably a film that you should watch. It has many, 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 many triggering pieces to it.
I think it's like a warning piece.
It's a warning piece. And that is exactly, even back in 2006, when the director wrote, directed, produced, I mean, this is almost a one-man show. When he did this, he literally even called it a warning piece. It actually makes me kind of sad that everyone's reaction is just so like, this is child porn, this is terrible, because it's all about also intent. You can turn on the television and watch TLC, for 5 minutes.
Oh, the baby pageants.
The baby pageants.
And you could say, they're just playing dress up.
They're just playing dress up. No, that's pretty indecent. It's all about intent. It's all about what intention that you have. Anything can be turned into something else. I think Megan Is Missing is a wonderful, important film that shows the dark realities and possibilities behind not being safe online.
I tend to agree, but on the same note, I also think that it's fair that the director gave good warning. On different sections of it and be like, but it's also good self-promotion.
And I do have to say that his video that he did recently this week when it went was more self-serving and kind of like proud of the popularity than an actual, hey, this may be triggering for some of you. It was like, hey.
Yeah, a very different kind of. Yeah, and I have mixed feelings just because they're the actual age. Now, does that add realism? Yeah, it does. But like at the same note, it's like, should we be doing that? Because to me, I feel like there's a double-edged viewership of people who are attracted to watching things like that, you know?
And that's honestly, guys, that's the hard part with true crime, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is the $1 million question is, you know, we love true crime. We love hearing about the podcast, right? Like, you're listening to us right now. What, you know, creep do you think is out there looking for podcasts that give you every single dark, dirty detail of the deed, and they're getting off on it?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're getting off on it, but to me, right, when we talk about film and stuff, is this a tendency to attract a certain crowd, right? Are we teaching? You know, is a learning moment becoming a teaching moment? It can go either way. Does that make sense?
It's always that fine line.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know how to articulate what I'm trying to say, but I feel like especially with mainstream media and stuff like that, if we normalize something, even if it is a warning, it becomes more of a problem in society. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
It's always that fine line. You know, I do enjoy extreme films myself. I do like an added bit of realism with, you know, a lot of things that I watch, especially when it comes to true crime. And that's just more from an inquisitive mind that wants to understand the psychology.
You're a sicko.
I'm a sicko. You look for certain movies and then you find all of these crazy production companies, right, of women who actually cut themselves, hurt themselves, movies that portray rape that people are buying. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. But, you know, people are speaking like that's what Megan is Missing is. And I have to say that it could not be further from the truth. And that's why I had, like, it literally forced me to get upset enough to do this episode. Yeah,
she's passionate.
I'm passionate about this movie. It is a bad movie, guys. At the end of the day, this movie is so bad for the first, like, hour, the first 2 acts, and then the last 22 minutes, I cried. And it is very, very rare that a movie like this makes me cry, but I cried because it is so sincerely impactful. So I guess I can't say that the entire movie is bad because I cried because there was enough character development to actually get me there. That, and it's just heinous to watch. So guys, what do you think? Do you think Megan is Missing is inappropriate? Do you think it is torture porn? Which does not exist, by the way. Or do you think that it's appropriate and it could be a useful tool? We want to know because I would love to engage with you.
What's interesting is that there's a lot of movies out there that already predate this, well predate this, about abduction, luring, grooming. I mean, it does exist, right? And even mainstream ones like Along Came a Spider with Morgan Freeman. A lot of people saw that movie. And I mean, it's about a girl being abducted and held captive, right? Like we have tons of those. I'm not really sure. I think the special effects in this just really like remind me of Junka Furuta.
Yeah.
You know, just the fact that she's being put in a barrel and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like they're torturing her for 120 days.
Yeah, so torture porn, quote unquote, does not exist. But if we're going off of the mainstream, say, definition that people go off of, it would be something like Hostel, right? Where there's gratuitous, prolonged camera work on torture or acts of, awful, basically.
Yeah, just the shock value of the act of violence.
Exactly. Megan is Missing does not have that. There is no actual full-on torture shown on screen. The rape scene, the camera is on her face, which actually makes it even more emotionally impacting. Not showing, full-on acts of violence like, say, Irreversible, the French film, that's a hard watch. Makes it more emotionally impactful. So how can a film be considered torture porn if they don't show you torture? Like actual prolonged, gratuitous, excessive. Every so often, I think especially when it comes to children, but every so often, people like to get their knickers in a twist over something when it comes to violence in women. It was Irreversible. If you recall that has a 9.5-minute long rape scene, which, would you consider that gratuitous? It went in the Cannes Film Festival. That's about as mainstream as you can get.
It's hard. It's hard because I don't find this to be hypersexualized. I find this to be a film that happens to be like kind of a warning.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And again, I would like to say that for those people who find this film triggering, traumatic, awful, and hate it and want it to be banned and taken away forever, I feel you and I understand. And I am so sorry that film, that this film made you feel that way. And I just respect honest discourse.
I think that we have to learn to separate our own traumas and our own feelings from actual film sometimes and realize, well, why do I feel this way? And I think that this is something that's very important for women to realize, especially, and men. If you feel triggered by something, you may want to consider, talking to a therapist about it. Maybe something happened to you and you don't remember. It's very important to note these things. Mental health is key. And just because something makes you feel something doesn't mean you should be shamed for it.
I completely 100% agree. So that is it, guys. We just had to do a quick episode of Megan is Missing because the world seems to be exploding around it. And I have actually, I covered it when it originally came out and I was like, what? This again? Are we serious? Friday, we will have our Lori Vallow episode, our deep dive with our special guest. And then we will see you next week for episode 2 of Order of the Solar Temple. So again, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at We Saw the Devil, Instagram at We Saw the Devil Podcast, our website, WeSawTheDevil.com, and our Patreon. If you like the show and want to financially back it and get some really effing cool goodies while you're at it, you can do it on patreon.com/We Saw the Devil.
Until next crime.